Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to lecture number 26. In this we will be discussing about the elevators page and how it plays a pivotal role in extending or enhancing the career or future of an entrepreneur on individual basis or corporate level basis. But before we move on, let's go through what we have discussed in our previous lectures. In our previous lectures we went through the discussion of e-commerce business and how the internet shaped the existing physical businesses into the new world and how they were able to expand their businesses across the oceans and how the startup businesses took place just because of the availability of internet and how they were able to capture wider audiences than ever before in the history. Further, we discussed about the myths that revolve around the existing e-commerce businesses and that people often think that it is easy to deploy or implement any e-commerce business, but it's really the opposite. So let's move on to what we will be discussing today. First, we will be defining what is an elevator pitch, and please remember that elevator pitch is something very different than the sales pitch that we have often heard of, but we will be looking at in the discussion ahead. Next, we will be moving on to the primary must-haves that an elevator pitch must include to be defined in an absolute manner, and next we will be looking at the general cautions that we should be taking care of when defining an elevator pitch. Further, we will be discussing the elements of the elevator pitch in detail, and lastly we will be seeing the real-time implementation of elevator pitch in the real life. So what is an elevator pitch? To look at it, we have to see the literal meaning of both the words the elevator and the pitch. Elevator is basically the lift that we use in the buildings to move between different levels of the building, while pitching is the presentation of something, or the pitching an idea is presenting some idea to somebody. So the elevator's pitch is basically that you have to consider yourself moving from level 1 to 3 in any building, and consider yourself that you have some very great magical kind of or whatever idea that you are very much enthusiastic about, and you want some potential partner or some potential businessman or some potential organization that is gonna invest in your idea, and you want to convince them. Well, to convince them, the only time you have is of around 1 minute, and that's in the physical movement between level 1 and 3 in that building. So obviously telling somebody a business idea is not an easy thing in such a short time span. So elevator pitch is basically the approach in which you concise your idea to such a limit that it remains attractive to somebody, that if somebody is gonna listen to it, he or she is gonna be interested in it and wanna hear more about it. So okay, coming up next we have the primary points that we should be taking care of when we are pitching an idea to somebody. Firstly, we have that an elevator pitch is not the sales pitch. Definitely, we should be very much aware of it that sales pitch is something we have often heard of, but it is entirely different from the elevator pitch. Sales pitch basically defines the sales projections for any business and how well it's gonna do in terms of the numbers. Well, elevator pitch is entirely about something else. Obviously, in further detail we will see that how you are gonna convince the next person when it comes to sales, but it's not about the sales in particular, it's the broader picture of whatever an entrepreneur or entrepreneurial venture, either it's individual based or corporate based is gonna do. Next we have that it's not a pitch of a great idea, team or product. Look, you don't have to give the broader or too generalized picture of that idea whatever you are going to do. You have to remain specific so it remains practical. It seems practical to do. Like if you are gonna tell somebody that we are going to adapt some strategy that's gonna wipe off the pollution from the face of the earth, nobody is gonna be convinced that easily for it. It's gonna take a long time if you are going to come up with that kind of statement to convince somebody. So like we have already said that we have a very short time span to explain our business and get somebody interested. So we are going to look at next point, that what we should be careful about when we are projecting an elevator pitch. So you are pitching what your business will do for customers, investors, and or society. So in the third point we are looking at that you are pitching what your business will do for customers, investors, and or society. So here the specifics, right? We are not talking general context, we are talking specific context in terms of customers how it's gonna do good, in terms of investor what good is gonna come out of it for them, or how it's gonna benefit the society if that's also a part of your idea. If your product or your idea is gonna do benefit society, it's a plus. So you are going to discuss that as well if that's part of your plan. Lastly, like we have said that we should remain concise, so it's all summarized in our last point that you want to pitch how your business solves a real problem or addresses a burning need that exists today, right? Like we have already said that it's not going to be a too generalized of a statement. It's gonna be related to the context, and it should be related to the need. In this they have stated that it solves a real world problem to address a burning need that exists today. Why it is said that it should be a burning need? Burning need is something that most of the people can relate to in their society. Like in the circumstances of today, the burning need is the improved healthcare system, right? The burning need is in the situation of the pandemic that we are facing today. The burning need is getting all the right facilitation to the right people at the right time. So if you have some business idea that can do the logistical supports or the healthcare support or in any terms, so you should be remain specific to whatever you are gonna do, right? And then it should be presented in a way that the other person can relate to it. We will discuss it in further sections. So next are the what must haves and the questions for the elevator pitch. Carrying on with our previous discussion, the interesting opening. The opening should be pretty interesting for everyone to get hooked on to. This is called the hook part of your elevator pitch, that you have to open with something and that can grabs the other person's attention immediately. We will be discussing it in the examples ahead. Second is the passion. You should be pretty passionate about whatever idea you are presented. If you are not passionate yourself, how are you gonna convince somebody else that you should be passionate about when you are not passionate about it in the first place? The third point is that you should keep it short, right? This is the main point that we have been discussing right from the start. So summarizing all three, the last is a caution we should be taking or of care of, that don't take too long to get the pain or the problem that you are solving. Of course, you could lose the listener's attention. Obviously, if somebody is telling you long stories and they can't even relate to it, or they can't see what's the bigger picture in that story, so obviously they are gonna lose their attention after just a little while. So next are the elements we were talking about earlier, that define an elevator pitch in detail, and we should we should be breaking down our elevator pitch keeping in view of these um, components. Firstly, like I said, is the hook. It's a pitch opening that grabs the listener's attention. So whatever is going to come out of your mouth, you should be pretty confident about it, and it should be interesting enough for the next person to listen to. Next is you would be giving out the brief description of your product or service. The third point will come to the after defining your product, you will tell them that that's the target market, that's the audience span, like we have already discussed in our previous lectures, that um, when we discussed that we had broad spectrum markets, we had narrow spectrum markets. So keeping that in view, we will be talking about whatever target market is about. The next is that obviously we will see what's the competition we have already existing in the market, because based upon that we will be defining that how we are different from our competitors and what makes our product more appealing to the customers, or would be convincing or appealing to our um, customers. So you have to define the competition, and then based on that competition you have to define how something different you are doing. Next we will have that uh, how it's gonna generate the capital. Obviously the next person might not all be interested about that how awesome your idea is. You have to obviously come to the part of the capital, and you have to tell them that how much capital it's gonna generate for them, or whatever the stakeholders that are involved in it in terms of finances. Next we have to give the brief description of the resources we initially need from the investors and the resources we will be needing along the way. Obviously, to run any business or to make the real implementation of any idea, you need some initial investment, and then along the way as thing develops you again need those investments. So you have to give the brief description of whatever resources that will be needed. And lastly, like we said, that we will be discussing about the capital generation of our business. So we will be defining that capital generation span as well, that how sooner the returns are gonna come out of our idea if we implement it, right? And lastly we have the memorable tagline or the closing line. Like we have already discussed that every company has their slogan or some value line attached to them that uh, is remembered by their loyal customers, or even the customers in general if they are aware of that company. So it's better to have a tagline as well that can remain in the listener's mind and might convince them unconsciously even more towards your idea whatever you have presented. So let's see how each of our component is discussed in detail. First, like we have said, that we should have a hook or a pitch opening, right? So a hook should grab the attention of the listener and set the stage for the concept. I think it's pretty understood thing, keeping in view of our earlier discussion. There are many ways to do this, including identifying the problems and needs you address. Like it's a given example underneath that we help resolve the housing crisis. Now consider yourself in an elevator with somebody. Okay, I should, before we move on, I should tell you something, that whoever you are pitching an idea to, you should be well aware of their background as well, so that you could understand what knowledge background they have and from which background they are coming from, so that it can be easy for you to relate to them. Like if somebody is coming from a technological background and you are presenting some idea that is related to medical background, and you are not able to translate that medical idea into technological terms or in simpler terms that could be understandable by that person, so you are going to lose your attention immediately. We will be seeing that how it happens in our discussion ahead, but it's very much important that you should know whatever the background is of that potential person that you are talking to, so that you can relate to them easily, right, on the same level if possible, or as much as possible. So let's suppose you are in an elevator with somebody, or you are in a very short time span you are presenting uh, an idea to somebody who's related to the real estate business, and you and in your society the housing crisis is going on, and there is too much deterioration in the business and people are facing troubles, and a businessman even involved in the real estate business are facing troubles due to whatever policies are going in the country, or because of the inflation, or multiple other reasons. So to hook that person, you tell him that we help resolve the housing crisis. Obviously it will be relatable to him, and he is very much probable to get hooked on to what you are going to say next, right? So the next is, if possible, help your listener relate to the problem. Like I have said, that you should be able to relate your statement to whatever background they are coming from. There are many problems that we face in general, all of us, right, in our daily lives, or whenever we are commuting we see uh, lots of issues that other people are facing. Even if we are not facing them, we are very well aware of it, but other people are facing, so it's always in our conscious. So to get somebody hooked on to your idea, you can also start by some question related to the problems that we face in our general life, or the problems we see in others' life. Whenever we are interacting with people, it's not necessary that we are the first hand affectees of those problems, but in our general life, as we uh, interact with people, we come across to see the problems that they are facing. So you can start with questioning if that's related to your idea. Like in this they have asked that, have you ever had your cell phone fail inside a building? I know it's something that has happened to me few times, so it's something that I can relate to, right? And obviously you people too have gone to places that where signals would have fallen or would have wiped out wiped out of your cell phones. So, or you can also tell the personal stories. Obviously, personal stories, we love hearing stories. It's the trait or the thing that we have, you know, been into since the start of mankind. So, hearing stories is something, very much appealing for everybody. So, you can start with very brief kind of personal story that you think that the next person can relate to. Next is our service pitch or the product pitch. Either way, if we are launching a product or we are thinking of initiating any service, business, or idea, So, what should we be keeping in mind? Number one, keep it simple and stupid, right? If you are using too much of technical jargons, nobody is gonna, remain interested for long. They're gonna lose your attention. So, you have to relate to them or tell them your story or idea in a very, very simple way. Second, eliminate technical terms or details. As I always said, you have to keep it simple. To keep it simple, you have to eliminate as much as technical terms as possible. In the examples ahead, we will be seeing at it as well. And lastly, that highlight customer benefit, not technical benefits. Both are pretty different things, because customer benefit may be related to the outcome of your product or your idea, while the technical benefits may not always benefit the customer as well or the interested person as. And not only that, but also if there are any technical benefits, you should be translating them into the customer benefits so that it remains less technical and more relatable to the person that is hearing. So here's the geek speak, which is very ineffective. For example, if we look at the example above, it's talking about the you know development of the medical equipment that has too many technical terms in it, and then the discussion about the encryption system and the algorithm systems, and the doll and adopters that are involved in the development of it. While it can more effectively be communicated by eliminating all of these technical terms, and it could be effectively mentioned. It is very much effectively mentioned in the statement below that we allow medical professionals to operate on cancer patients using the least invasive equipment on the market. Obviously, we can come to the technical part later. Nobody is going to exclude it from your business idea, obviously, but it comes when we are talking on the business terms, when somebody is hooked on, somebody is totally convinced about your idea. We can then discuss about the technical details. Remember that the idea of elevator pitch is just getting them convinced in the first place, and then we can talk about the technical details later on. Okay, customer benefits, not the technical benefits. So here is the example that how technical benefits are presented and how they are relatively translated into the business benefits. If somebody is telling you the technical benefit has of whatever product you are creating has unmatched assimilation, dimensional attributes, or the large system adaptability, you won't be able to process all of it in such a short time span. So you can just give them a simplistic view of whatever your business is gonna do. You can tell them that if you are gonna go for this idea, it can increase your overall sales, it can increase the efficiency of the product that it's gonna replace or whatever process you are already using, and it's gonna cut cost by 25%. Well, it's a more convincing strategy to get somebody to listen to you. Okay, next we are gonna be talking about the target target market description and relate to a need. Right, first you're gonna be telling them about to identifying the problem solved or need to be addressed in a sentence or two. For example, like it's given here, that we allow any wireless technology to work inside any building that utilizes our wireless networking product. So technically how we are going to do that is something else, but it's related to the previous story that we talked about here. Here, that we ask them a question that have you ever had your cell phone fail inside a building? Relating to that, obviously most of the time the answer would be yes, or that person would, if not have experienced something himself or herself, he would have listened a story of somebody else experiencing that thing. So keeping that view in question, here we have identified our problem in a sentence or two as directed. Next we will be telling them about uh, the customer who has already used our product or has shown interest in our product. So the next point we have is the possible mention of customer who is already using our product or has shown interest in our product. And like for example, here is the example of Federal Aviation Administration, and that has determined that we only use system that can quickly screen people at security checkpoints while also exceeding their security needs. So it's an exemplary uh, testimonial kind of you know that can back up your product, that if there is already real implementation of your product somewhere and you are looking for an expansion of your market across broader range, so sound testimonial can do a lot good for your idea or organization in general. Lastly, if you don't have any existing customer, like if it's a new idea and it's gonna be taking place in future and you have not materialized it, so you can obviously quantify the size of your market, right, from a reputable sources. Like if you are targeting the e-learning software, or you are targeting the e-learning um, tablets or whatever idea that is in your mind for the children between age of 1 and 5 in Pakistan. So census statistics that we already have are pretty credible, that you can uh, narrow down the number of people that are your possible target audience. You can start by seeing the overall population of Pakistan, and then you can narrow it down further for the children aged between 1 and 5, and then you can further narrow it down between all the provinces that we have, and you can further even narrow it down to the children living in the cities, urban and rural areas as well, right? So whatever your target audience is, you can reach to it and define your possible customers based upon the already existing statistics from a reputable source. Next, as we have already discussed and talked about, that you should talk about your competition. and then based on your competition that is already existent, you can talk about what good you are gonna do, right? So here it is that you have to briefly acknowledge your competition, that you can talk about carrying on with the wireless networking example. We can say that there are many vendors that provide internal wireless network like Linksys and Cisco, right? And then based on that competition that is already defined, you can further neutralize your competition by telling them what's new in your product. Like here, unlike the competitors, our firm offers a customer, like carrying on with our networking example, you can tell them that our networking devices can even uh, enable the devices to communicate between the steel walls, right, which is not supported by our already existent competitors. So it might be an substantial factor for somebody to take into consideration, and you can further tell them how you are gonna cut on cost compared to your competitor, right? So it could be any competitive advantage. So next comes how you make the money, the generation of the capital and the revenue cycle and the cash flow and everything. So here is the example of a grooming service for pets during the day, and they have talked about that they have different service level packages and how they will be distributing their products, right, directly through the physical store as well as online stores. And lastly, they might license their services to the um, upcoming businesses or already existing businesses. So the next is, like we have already talked about, that whatever business or idea you think you are gonna uh, run or invest into, you need some initial capital for it to establish, and the rest is the supporting capital that comes along the way as things progresses. So you have to describe the initial investment required at the stage of business planning, and you have to further elaborate. So initially you have to start by discussing whatever the initial investment you will be needing to start up that idea or materialize it. And next you would be segregating or telling that how much money will be used in what aspect, right? And lastly, you will be discussing about the rate of return, the ROI, or the payback that is expected for the investors. Like in the examples below, it's mentioned that we are seeking a $1.5 million investment to fund manufacturing, marketing, and initial product distribution. Within 5 years, we seek to achieve an IPO, at which time investors can expect a payback at about 20 ROI, rate of return. So you see in these brief lines they have almost projected all of their financial requirements and the returns. So that's the essence of elevator speech. Alright, last are the taglines or the pitch closings. We have said that they should be a memorable one, so that the whatever idea we have projected and the next person can keep it remembered in an effective way. It should not only grab his conscious but also the unconscious part of his mind. So here are a few examples. First is of General Electric, that says that brings good things to light. Acura says the road will never be the same, while Harley Davidson says American by birth and rebel by choice. Well, for the people who love to ride bikes, I think that's pretty relatable for them. So this is the essence of taglines as well, that it really clings onto your mind. And if you didn't have enough time to come up with a punchline, so and professionally end your conversation with a simple thank you, it can also be effective. So here is the summarized example of an elevator speech um, that we have carried on with from the start. So let's give it a brief look here. First is the hook. Hook is, you know, we started with a question that have you ever had your cell phone failed inside a building? We told them that we provide a wireless communication network that enables any cell phone to work anywhere inside all building types while ensuring your communications are secure. Right? In simple two lines, you have covered most of the aspects types. Obviously, security is very essential in the technological era of today. So, by just saying two small words, you have ensured such a high credible and the most required technological aspect of your product. Next is you tell them that the market that you have target or already have target. You tell them that FCC has determined that over 60% of the 5 million commercial buildings in US inhabit wireless or cell phone communications from within. Right? You have told them the already existing statistics of FCC, that is pretty authentic organization already there, existing there, and people have already believed in their existing statistics. So obviously that even grabs more attention of that listener. And further they have extended, the clever part here is that they have told about the American market first, and then they have already nudged about their international expansion as well, by saying that the percentage is even higher in international markets, suggesting a huge need for better wireless communication networks. So that way they have said that they will not only be making a product for America or be remain confined to American market, but also it's the intention to go international with your product. Next is the competition and differentiation with the already existing competitors that we have. So here it is mentioned that there are many vendors that provide internal wireless network like Linksys and Cisco. However, we are the only vendors that enable communication that can penetrate steel and other high density construction materials, which significantly reduces the cost of installation. What a great way to say it, right? Next we come to the revenue. We can install the wireless network in a building with no charge. Right here is the financial model of it, and then can charge a usage fee for all the calls that we carry on our network. Right? It's the beneficial for the customer. If it's initially beneficial for the customer, then obviously it's way more attractive for the investor, that they are installing it freely, and their revenue is not dependent on the device itself but the service it is providing. It's even a much greater business plan or financial projection. And the investment requirement and the payback estimate, that we are estimating a $1.5 million investment to fund manufacturing marketing like cost, that how it will be, and the 20% ROI. And the closing, we have used the closing line as that we make wireless communication simple and effective. So keeping it simple and effective is something that everybody is always looking into everything. Concluding our today's lecture, Obviously, what no matter how good your idea is, how good you have gone through that idea over and over again, you need to practice it, right? And you have to keep it in mind that you will be stopped at 1 minute time mark, and you should not be presenting your idea in a way that sounds robotic or very unnatural, right? So, and lastly, the if you are enthusiastic about some idea, you will be able to remember and know every part of your idea if you are truly enthusiastic about making it happen. So it's obviously natural for anybody to deliver it without sounding robotic or too unnatural. So to sum it up, we have to practice it over and over and over again. So our lecture and review is that we first defined what an elevator speech is, and the generalized must-haves and the questions we should be taking care of when defining our elevator speech. And then we saw the uh, elements of the elevator speech in detail, and next we will be moving on with the real life implementation and examples of the elevator speech in rather detailed manner. So I hope everybody would have understood what we have discussed today, and hope to see you guys in the live session. Take care.